Here's the project at hand today. Got a Ford diesel van. Pretty interesting little project. It's a friend of mine's. So four-wheel drive conversion was not done by Quigley. It was done very incorrectly by the previous owner. Recently we have swapped out the rear axle to a full-size Super Duty axle. The Dana 60 in the front, we put all new steering on it. Put the big steering box brace on it. Dual steering stabilizers, heavy duty steering linkage, new track bar mount, new track bar. Been lots of fun. But the project at hand today, this truck or van, when it was bought by my buddy, the speedometer reads extremely fast. And that may just have something to do with the fact this is a four-wheel drive conversion van and this thing has no idea how fast it's going. So the 7.3 power stroke that is in it doesn't have anything done to it, but obviously since it's been converted to four-wheel drive, it has a different transmission and it has a transfer case. So this speedometer is reading way off. Project at hand today is get this thing running correctly. The parts he picked up are the SGI 100BT signal interface from Dakota Digital. You can see here, I've got the box in hand, and I'll be wiring this thing in and hopefully getting this speedometer to work correctly. Okay, so in the instructions for this little guy, the setup I will be using is what they call application number 3, H to L, which is because this speedometer is reading too fast and we need to bring it lower. So their H to L refers to a high speed to low speed conversion. They talk about the speed sensors. Now on the Fords, they have some really interesting ways that they do things. So there is a vehicle speed sensor on top of the transmission. There is an output shaft speed sensor on the back of the transmission. Some trucks have another one on the transfer case, and then also on the rear axle. Let me get my creeper here. Turn my light on. Right there on top of the differential, there's also an ABS speed sensor. This is the one that people are going to commonly think they need to use for this system, but what I'm finding is not that one. So, roll back here. There's a transfer case. This is going to be very difficult to show you, but I'm going to do my best. See that wire plug right there that is undone goes to the speed sensor right there, right on the tail shaft housing. That reads the output shaft of the transmission speed sensor. That's the one that we're going to be tying into. In their directions, they say that there should be on this wire plug a full-time ground and a signal, which I have already confirmed using my power probe. So I can just hook it up. It tells me if there's ground power, whatnot, whatever. And the other reason I know that's the one that we will be using, and this is my way of confirming it, as you saw, I have the vehicle speed sensor disconnected down there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to fire the truck up, drop it in gear, make sure the speedometer is not getting any signal at all, which I have the rear end jacked up so the tires will spin, telling me that I know the transmission is working and at speed. Good old wait to start light. At least this Ford actually starts. Okay, fire it up. Drop it in gear, let off the brake. The speedometer does not move. That tire is definitely spinning. So, that tells me that the speedometer output shaft speed sensor is the one that I need to be tying into, because that is the one that is giving the speedometer its signal. That's the one that I need to be changing. So, we're going to go by their instructions for the kit, which wherever I put them, yeah, over here. they want you to tie in to the wires for that sensor. We're going to tie into the ground, and we're going to tie into the speed input signal, and those are going to be going to the terminals that they designate, just like on the picture. Then we're going to need a 12-volt power, ground, and in this application I don't believe we need the sensor 12-volt power because it doesn't have that. So I'm going to find a place to get this guy mounted up, run those wires to it, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we know we need to pull some wires to run to that new sensor down there. Or not the new sensor, but where we will be tying into the stock one. And I'm going to be mounting the box inside the cab. So I need to pull wires from the cab out through the engine bay, which I've already found a hole down in the firewall that somebody else has ran some wires through. So we're going to utilize that hole. I'm going to pull the overflow bottle out so I can easily access those wires, pull them out, and get some slack out here. Slide this guy out of the way so I can reach in here and find those wires. Never easy to pull through the firewall. Never. I know I need 2 wires to go to the sensor, and I need 1 wire to go back down to the sensor, so I'm just going to pull a pair of 3 14 gauge. This is actually a trailer wiring, but works good for this purpose. Make sure I pull plenty of slack because I can pull anything extra back into the cab. Okay, so I've got my wires pulled down. They are behind the camera right now. I got a good place. I'm going to route them right along the frame rail with the stock harness. The next thing we need to know is which wire is which. So we should have a 12-volt ground and a signal wire. So we need to know which one each one of those 2 wires is off our speedo plug here. And the plug only goes on the sensor one way, so that tells us which wire is going to be which. So we have, see if I can get the power probe in the shot. Nothing on that wire, ground on that one. So now we know where we need to cut and make our connections. So now we know that this be the bottom left wire is our ground. We can go ahead and snip the wires, check which color is that ground so we can put this connector back in the right spot. Pull that connector out, and we'll test for our colors. Nothing on the gray wire. Pink wire is ground. Easy. Okay, I've become quite a fan of these little solder heat shrink connectors. Let's see, we got solder built into them. I prefer to use those anytime I'm underneath a vehicle. I absolutely despise crimp-on connectors when it's under a vehicle because that's not sealed and it's not going to last forever, and I like doing things one time. I have found that you can use these little flame guys. They do fine. You do have to be a little bit careful about the heat so you don't burn up the heat shrink, but they do the job nicely. So what I got going on here is my new harness that is coming down from inside the cab. I have the 2 connections going to the pigtail for the what do they call it, because Ford likes to change the names on things, the OSS, the output shaft speed sensor. So I have my heat shrink connectors in place. And because I like things to make sense, I know that the pink is the ground, so I have it going to the white wire. My signal is the gray, that is going to the brown. So those will get plugged in back on the transmission and zip tied up in place, get it all nice and routed. And the yellow wire is going to be the returning output signal from the box going to the factory signal wire for the Ford. The ground that goes down is no longer used. That can just be taped up and put out of the way. Okay, now we're back up in the cab. We have our harness that we just finished underneath. So we will refer back to the instructions. Looks like we need to hook up our sensor ground to the speed negative and our speed input signal to the input. So we'll go ahead and get that done real quick. Come on, get in there. Now, according to their directions, it depends on how fast the speedo is going. This one is running about 5 times too fast. So if you're doing 20 miles an hour, it thinks you're doing 100. So I sent an email off to the company, Dakota Digital, and they said to start out on output level 4. So we're going to try that one first. Might be the same for other vans. Depends on the transmission and what signal it's sending up to the speedo. Okay, and for my ground, I'm just going to be running right to one of the factory Ford dash bolts. Just got another chunk of that wire. Hopefully I grab the right size, because sometimes things don't go right on camera. I should say most of the time. Most of the time you're fiddling around with what you're trying to do while the camera's running. Makes you look like an idiot. Make sure that's good and on there. Even though I'm inside of the cab now, and I'm not using the solder connectors, still going to use heat shrink. Just my personal preference. I like my wires to be sealed up. Okay, now we're going to do a little digging, see where we can pick up 12 volt accessory power. And I think this guy is going to go right there. Seems like a good spot for it. Okay, so I don't have it mounted up. I wanted to keep it out where I can get to it. I can do a couple test drives. So we got our power, got our ground, our input from the speed sensor, ground from the speed sensor. I have found that output level 3 is where it needed to be. And then, according to this Duma Flitchy, so the guy recommended I start on 4. I ended up moving to 3 so I could get a signal on the speedometer. Don't worry about the ABS and brake lights, that's a separate issue. So I have the values set at output level 3, 67 hertz, and there's another setting on there that's at 0.30 to get it to a functioning speedo. Granted, I'm just doing my slow test drives right now, but that box is all wired in. I have it tuned. Speedometer's working very nicely. Speed bump. Typical turd of a 7.3. It's working. And back to the shop. So, there you go, guys. If you're going to do a Quigley conversion van, 4-wheel drive, or I believe the other company is a U-line, and you want to have functioning speedometer, make the transmission shift nice and smooth like it should, this is the little box that you need. Works good. I got a little bit of tidying up to do, finish up my wiring, put those back on. And if you were wondering, that is the Dakota Digital SGI 100 Bluetooth is the box that you'll need to do this. I'm sure Dakota Digital has some other products that will do the same thing, but this is the newest, latest and greatest, and it has the Bluetooth capability, which was really nice because I can download their app on my phone and be driving down the road, reach down, change the settings real quick, tune it in nice and quick. Worked pretty good. So yeah, thanks for watching.